Now in this video, I'm going to focus on our knotty issues of responsibility and accountability, and more importantly, some simple things that you can do to raise the bar in your workplace. Now in our previous video, we set out a clear distinction and definition of responsibility and accountability. Responsibility is about doing and accountability is about owning. So what are the simple things that you can do? Well, the first recommendation I'm going to give you is to revisit that first video and get some real clarity about what we mean by responsibility and accountability. And never cease to be surprised at the number of times that accountable and responsible are used interchangeably in businesses, and that creates confusion. So the simplest step is get real clarity about what you mean when you're issuing responsibilities and accountabilities, and feel free to engage the other person in that conversation. Make sure you're both clear. The second thing is that in businesses we try to go for a one-size-fits-all. So we'll use the same method of deployment for accountability and responsibility, and that creates some tension. Now responsibility, because it can be clearly defined as a to-do list and a list of expectations, can be delegated, but that's not the same with accountability. Because with accountability, what we're asking people to do is to take on a mantle of ownership for a future impact that hasn't really happened yet. And in order to do that, they need to choose, they need to kind of step in of their own free will. So delegating that won't work. What we need to do is have an engaging conversation where you can lay out your expectations, they can ask their questions, and then they can voluntarily step in and take on that mantle. The third thing is creating a balance between autocracy and autonomy. Now, naively in businesses, we think that we are either totally autocratic or we're going to be totally autonomous. This is about finding balance, because what we're doing here is setting out some boundaries. Now, in setting out the boundaries and labelling out your expectations, it's good to be prescriptive. Be detailed so that you're very, very clear on both sides as to what the expectation is and what the deliverables are. But once you've laid out those boundaries, then this is where autonomy comes in, because people need to bring in their mindset, their values, their own choices, and their own individuality into the how it's delivered. So be autocratic and be prescriptive in levelling out the what, but when it comes to the how, relax, allow people to bring their natural brilliance to play. The fourth thing is about goalposts. Because when we allow people to bring in their natural brilliance, it's going to be attractive to you and you're going to see things that you like. And what businesses tend to do is they'll pick up on the things that they like and they'll write them in a prescriptive term into more responsibilities. So this creates the illusion that we're moving the goalposts. What I want you to do is set a wider goalpost. Once you've set your boundaries, relax and allow people to bring their individuality and let them flourish. Don't grab what they've got as individual brilliance and try and be prescriptive. I used to work on a project where I would write a diary to myself or a journal at the end of each week. And I shared that journal just as a bit of continuous improvement with the project, because all I was talking about was what went well and what I needed to do differently. Very soon that organisation wrote that as an expectation for everybody on the project. So you can imagine how popular I was with the extra work I was giving to the other facilitators. But more interesting to me was my own reaction. Now, I used to write that journal for me, and it was something that I did voluntarily. But when I saw it in writing as an expectation and a responsibility, it no longer enthused me. I didn't want to do it anymore. So just relax on that one. So long as you're clear on the boundaries and your expectations, leave it alone. So set that wider goalpost. The final thing is about reducing threat. Now, our minds really like the idea of responsibility and accountability. It appeals to our status and our sense of self-worth. The downside is that what we imagine in our minds is not the reality that our businesses give us with responsibility and accountability. Because when it comes down to what businesses give, there is a dark side to it. Because implicit with accountability is the thought of being held to account. So there's a tension between what our minds want and the threat of punishment that the business deliverable tends to give. So how do you reduce that threat? Businesses are brilliant at jumping on errors and creating policies and processes to try and reduce risk, and that creates the punitive effect. What they're not so good at is applying the same standard for when things go well. You see, acceptance of accountability is accepting the accountability for when things go wrong, but equally it's accepting accountability for when things go right. And this is where we can make the best of this. So what we need to do is balance or even overbalance the amount of positive reinforcement that you give for when things go well, which will then sit more nicely with occasionally when things don't go so well, we do need to step up and we need to accept that ownership. So in summary, the 5 things that you can do. Get some clarity about your definitions of responsibility and accountability. Share that with the person that you're engaging. 2, engage and delegate. Delegate responsibility, engage accountability. Thirdly, set boundaries. Be prescriptive about what your expectations are and where the boundaries are, and then relax and allow some autonomy with how people deliver on those expectations. Fourthly, widen the goalposts to allow people to flourish and bring their individual brilliance, and don't be too quick on grabbing all the big things and writing them into responsibilities. And finally, reduce threat. Overbalance. Be liberal with your positive reinforcement of when things go well, equally as much as when things don't go so well. If you stick with those 5 things, I'm sure you'll find that responsibility and accountability will become better in your organisation.